Alright, hello, welcome back to the podcast. Once again, everybody, PayPal and Patreon are down below for anybody who wants to support me. Only do so if you actually can. So, natural gas prices in the European market have collapsed and are still going down compared to the absurd record heights that Russia threatened and people feared were going to be the new normal. They are down drastically. Now, natural gas in Europe in recent history has always been more expensive than natural gas in the US. Whereas in the US, over the last number of years, it was generally only around $2 or $3 per thousand cubic feet, with bad supply constraining events causing it to spike up to like 6, 7, or 8. Whereas over in Europe, it usually averaged in the double digits, typically at lower points tending to be down close to around 10, and when encountering severe events or supply issues, tending to go up into the 20s. This year, however, after Russia invaded Ukraine and threatened to cut off gas supplies to Europe as a form of attempted blackmail to get them to stop supporting Ukraine, prices in Europe began jumping further and further, and at the highest point during this summer, getting up to around $100 per thousand cubic feet. While for comparison, the price in the US was only around $8. Now natural gas prices in Europe have tumbled down and are down around $27 or $28 per thousand cubic feet, and are still dropping with the potential to go a bit more, although I don't think they will go back below 2022 levels. So the obvious question being, how? And the answer is adequate supply, despite expectations and despite threats. Most countries in Europe have their natural gas storage inventories almost completely full, and continuing warmer/milder weather has led to an increasing delay in the start of heating demand, along with Europe in totality decreasing its natural gas consumption over the last several months by about 7%. This primarily coming from reducing natural gas-fired power generation, along with adequate filling of the supply gaps via several means. Firstly, an additional 2 billion cubic feet per day of output by Algeria, additional LNG shipments from the US, as an extra 2 billion cubic feet per day of LNG shipment supply had just become available when all this started anyways, and also about 2 billion cubic feet per day of LNG supply being re-divertible, as starting last year and now in bigger part this year, Japan has been restarting a lot of their nuclear power stations, and South Korea has turned back on the few that they had shut off, and so that freed up about 2 billion cubic feet per day of LNG that was going from the US over to Japan and South Korea to now be redirectable to Europe. And Russia still actually having to supply gas to the EU anyways, because despite the destruction of one of the Nord Stream pipelines at the end of summer, there are actually other pipelines that are used to transfer Russian gas, and despite wanting to cut off Europe completely and insisting that the revenue will just be made up by selling it to China, for one, just like the oil being sent to India, China is buying that gas at a discount, and China themselves is not actually taking most of it, as China buys it on the market, that is the initial purchase. However, after buying it at a discount from Russia, China then sells it to Europe at regular price or higher and makes money themselves, and also kind of continues to undercut Russia, as they are more than pleased to take full advantage of Russia's whole self-destruction here. China is on market buying the gas and then selling it on market back to Europe, with Russia just sending the gas straight to Europe, which kind of completely negates and undercuts their whole cutoff threat. Which, that being the case, one might ask, why would they then do that? Why would they keep sending the gas to Europe? And the answer is, because that's what China's paying them to do. If they didn't do that, China wouldn't pay them. And so that's brought us to this point now, with European gas inventories being full, and Europe actually still receiving adequate supplies, and in fact about to start receiving additional supplies in the form of more LNG from the US, as various terminals that were offline this year come back online over the next month and a half. Europe will also be reducing their winter heating demand, partly from just thermostat reductions by a few degrees, but also from some bit of return to remote work, and thus removing the large heating demand from a decent number of offices and businesses of larger buildings. an effort which could actually be majorly dialed up if even greater reductions are needed. So that's that for where those prices are at the moment. Thank everybody for sticking around and listening. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already. PayPal and Patreon are down there if you want to support me. You only do so if you actually can. Also go sub to my cat's channel. We have like a month or a month and a half left to get her up to 1,000 subs before the monetization deadline for her. But no matter what happens to me, may God bless and protect all of you, and I will see you all around next time.